I don't know how many of you have time to look at the gospel ahead of time before Mass, but if you do, you may have been like me this week in terms of seeing so many strange, if you will, parallels to what we've been seeing as a country this past week. We're looking at, the second reading talking about unity. And you and I truly belong to the largest unified body that's continuously existed on the face of the earth, Catholic Church. We'll see how that plays in the gospel. But we also look at, if you will, the poor calling of leaders within this organization. And if you think about those leaders, what we're seeing Jesus going up on the mountain, that's a referral actually back to Moses, who also went up on the mountain. Moses comes down with his 10 commandments and God's commandments. And what's happening? He comes down the mountain, and before he gets down with the commandments, people's never seen them. There's debauchery. There's all kinds of protests going on. We don't want this leadership that we're having among us. So, kind of a reference to yesterday's celebration, if you will, if you want to call it a celebration. Tremendous difference between that and then looking at the call for a cabinet. And you think of Jesus calling his apostles. Can you imagine? People are going to give advice. Here's Jesus calling the leadership of what is now the largest continuous body on the face of the earth. And he calls two fishermen to start with. Peter is like, good Lord, don't you know what you're doing here? If any of us had a say in it and kind of could see the future, it's like, here's one, he's going to deny you, Lord. And he's a fisherman. What does he know? It's like, he fished all night and he didn't catch anything. And then Jesus showed him how to really catch fish. And then he goes on to get the next two guys, James and John. And it's like, come on, Lord. You're wanting to start this new organization. Remember the old covenant? We just saw how, and again, it's almost the same kind of thing. We've got the whole Old Testament. Jews. The Jews don't evangelize. Never called to evangelize. They're called to be prosperous, to multiply on their own. And so John is the last of them. He's out of the picture, and immediately Jesus takes off in a new direction. Sound familiar? Here's the new direction here, and Jesus is going now to evangelize. His people, his kingdom is for the whole world, and we are called to be a people, all of us involved in that evangelization. Now, in that process, he says, I'm going to make you fishers of men. So he calls James and John. You hear their nickname? Sons of Thunder, hotheads. It's not a good way to try to talk about peace and love and kindness and, to be good at working with people. But that's Jesus' call. Now, how many of us have ever hired a cabinet member before? Not me. It's like, okay, I'm going to trust somebody that knows and has some business sense how to hire important people. So anyway, we're seeing so many parallels, and it's like, wow. But in all of it, we're hearing this call to serve. We hear Paul. Paul was called as an apostle out of due time. We hear Peter, James, John, and Andrew being called today. And so it's all an illusion. Next week we're going to hear about the Beatitudes. So Jesus is taking them up on the mountain. And he gets on top of this mountain, gives the Beatitudes that we have next week. But while he's on the mountain, we're also going to hear at the beginning the allusions about the Eucharist. Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man, which is going to be among the last things these same apostles are going to hear. Take this, all of you, and eat it. This is my body. But in that, well, apparently they're gathered there. Jesus calls the apostles up by name. Peter. Every evangelist, everyone who writes the list of the apostles always begins with Peter. Gives us an immediate sign there. Peter, James, John, I want all of you to come up here. And we have all the people down the road who have been fed now and are now looking at what Jesus is doing. So there's a setting up, if you will, of that organization. And Jesus established the way to have unity throughout the centuries. One is the apostles in union with Peter. The second is the gift of the Eucharist. If we are able to share in the body of Christ, we are in union with the church, we are in union with Christ, and we are, in that sense, righteous with God. So today we look at that sense of call. And Paul's saying over and over, unity. We're not followers of this or that pope throughout the centuries. We're followers of the current pope, who is the Bishop of Rome. And as such, we are called to union with him. So think about calls. I had to start thinking about my own call, if you will. Look back in, Say, when did it happen? I didn't hear, like Peter, James, and John. Jesus didn't tap me on the shoulder and say, you got it. It's like, no. It's like, when did it happen? Did it happen when I was in second grade? When Dad walked up to the communion rail, there used to be communion rails, and unless you had a reason to be behind that communion rail, you didn't go there. Dad walked up the communion rail, Father standing on the other side. He said, Father, my son wants to serve. I'm sure he smiled because he didn't have many servers, just like here today. It was a mission church, believe it or not. The only parish on Virginia Beach, which today have many, many parishes, but it's the only one back then. So it was mainly a tourist town, and we had lots of people coming there, and military people. And so, started serving in second grade. And often, gentlemen, men would come up from the congregation to help serve. If I was the only one there, some gentlemen, military, in uniform or whatever, they come up and help serve. It's the same no matter what church you went to in the world. It's easy for them to fall into place. And that was wonderful. That also taught me something. So was it there when Dad asked Father about my serving? Or maybe it was third or fourth grade when I was the only Catholic in my class. I didn't go to Catholic school then. I was the only Catholic in my class. And the teacher looked at me and said, Dan, you're Catholic? Spell priest for me. P-R-E-I-C. I didn't get it right. Well, I got to sit in the hall. It's like, did that make a negative impression to imprint on me that word priest? Who knows what God uses, huh? Or was it later when we moved to here in Missouri that we had a Catholic school and sister, because I was behind, I really was, sister was so kind to meet with me on Saturdays and catch me up, with the rest of the class, so I could stay with my grade. Like, wow, any of those? Or was it just Grandma giving me this little holy card that said, God bless someone of our family's vocation to be a priest, sister, or brother, that I prayed every day? Who knows? The combination of all of that. And so it's a recognition that, yes, God did call me. But in that call, even like with Paul, it's like, wait a minute, God, I want a family. I'm the oldest of 100 first cousins. We have children. And I'm like, well, if you become a priest, you're not going to have kids. Well, golly. Well, then I thought about being in maybe a religious community. They don't deal with families. So I want to be a Dawson priest. You've got families. God said, tell you, anyone who gives a mother, father, brother, sister, for my sake, will have 100 times. 100 times as many children? Where are they at? I would have had more than this by myself. So, where are they? So God calls us to say yes. And if you look at the gospel, and see the apostles that are called, they were probably married men, right? Oh, except maybe John. We know Peter had a mother-in-law, so that means he probably was married. Whether she was gone or not at this time, we don't know. But did you hear the children there? In the Old Testament, John, may your quiver be filled with them. It was important that you have children. In the New Testament, every single one of the apostles called away from their families. They left their nest, they left their father and everyone, including their children, presumably. And you never hear of children attached to them. Only to clarify that the new covenant is not going to be based on inheritance. You don't become a priest and have your child to take over your office. It's not called in that way. It is called individually by Christ. And so we look at that. We think, wow, okay, there is a call. And there's a call, as we heard last week, for all of us. Remember the bishop said, don't sit on the sideline doing nothing, be spectators. Catholic Church is not for spectators. Realizing that all of us have been called to be about the business of evangelization, to bring others to know the light, to bring others into the kingdom. It's easy. It's easy to get, if you will, a great protest when everybody's simply protesting for their own pleasures. LGBT or whatever it is. They're all saying, I want me. So it's harder when you recognize that your call is to look out for the other. Like this coming Friday. Some of you will be going with me to D.C. I try to go regularly. It's like, why? Maybe those are my children. Millions and millions that are being killed, that I'm called to be a part of caring for. Those people are not there for their own benefit. They're there for protection of other people's children who are not yet born. That's why they're there. It's a lot harder to get that kind of commitment when you're looking out for the other. So it is for you and I as Catholics, as Christians. We are called to be a people for others. We're called to be a people who give a light to the nations because we care about the needs of everyone, no matter who they are. So today, as we continue this journey, this third week of ordinary time, we'll continue to hear what that journey involves. And there is a cost to it. There's a cost to the call. There's a cost to the apostles and leaving all their family behind. There's a cost to every one of us. If we do not feel a cost, a price in being a disciple, the chances are we're not listening yet. We're not hearing Christ in our own life. Today, let's not be afraid to listen. Not be afraid. And young people, you don't have to be a priest or a sister. You know, at least think about 2 years maybe of helping with some national body that ministers to others. Think about that. We all have a call. And we're all called to pay a price.